Saturday, July 23rd, tomato update. Well, we are still in the sweltering heat, but everything's alive. Start with the pink brandywine. Getting pretty tall. You know, today's been really hot. It hit 101. And then last night it didn't really cool off too much. But the day before that, or I should say the night before that night, it got down to 78 at like 8 at night. And it stayed like that till about, I'm going to say maybe 11 o'clock a.m. And that's when I had my most growth. That's one nice thing about the the heat versus the cold. The heat stunts them, and then when the heat goes away, they take off. You get stunted by the cold, and it sets them back a week. But at any rate, unfortunately, as cute as that heirloom tomato is, it hasn't grown a whole lot, but it's staying healthy. No blossom end rot. Doing exactly what you expect out of a heirloom. Always my favorites. They just got that beautiful pumpkin shape as opposed to the typical round tomato shape. Got a couple flowers. There's only one left now. I mean, I had a bunch, I'd say probably about 10 or 15 explode when we had that nice weather. And then the heat came back and they're all shriveling up. This one just can't make it in time. I mean, you see what happens, which is why we're trying to make it through August. You know, we're almost through July, 8 more days, 9 more days, something like that. Make it through August, and then hope to have fruit then. But it's hanging in there. As far as height, with me up to the base, it's taller than my reach. So you figure, what do we got? About 1.5 feet. Well, I'd say half a foot. Let's do 2, 4, 6.5 feet. So we're probably about 6.5 feet, maybe. Got a couple of shoots coming out that I'm kind of letting go. I haven't juded them up yet with the string, but I will when the time comes, if they start sagging. Getting real close to having our first real tomato. Was this the big boy? My tag's getting down there. Yep, the big boy. It did develop a little bit of cracking, and that just happened today. But it started turning yesterday, so I'm thinking by tomorrow it may be ready. Unfortunately, tomorrow's Sunday, and I go out of town to my in-laws, so hopefully it survives okay, but that's real close. Nice little early treat. Unexpected with these temperatures. Still letting this one go. It's still hard. We'll see what happens with that. The other one's fine. About the same height. Definitely good size. And I did do that Miracle-Gro last week. If you remember, I went back to the Miracle-Gro rather than focusing on the phosphate and potassium, excuse me, of the master blend. We're going to have this better boy ready in the next few days. I am getting a couple interesting spots on it. Let's see if I could get in there. That upper right hemisphere, the second quadrant. For you mathematicians that like to talk X and Y axis. Again, this one got stunted because it got hit the hardest by that hornworm. But as you can see, we've had growth. It's coming back. Hasn't come anywhere near to catching up to this side, which the two were neck and neck up until that happened. This one's pretty tall. This one's probably about 6 foot. Maybe a little bit more. And what was this? Our red beefsteak? You think I'd have them memorized by now. I guess if I thought about it, I do. Red beefsteak's doing okay. Remember that one and my Cherokee were my two stunted. So now we are up to about my nose. put that camera up to about my nose. That's with the phone directly in front of my nose. Nothing exciting tomato wise. We are starting to get a little browning of the tips there. But again, we've had crazy heat, and now we're getting into where it just, we have nights that don't want to drop below 90 until like 4 in the morning. And then it drops to the maybe low 80s. And then by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, the heat's already starting to crank back up. Cherokee. I was so happy. It was doing so well. And I can't remember if this was in last week's video. It may have just happened that last Saturday. But I had these leaves die. And it's not the whole plant. I mean, most of the plant's thriving. But I had a couple right in here. Couple right there. This branch that get hit the hardest. One there. And then that little bit right there. So I gotta do my research and see if that's a disease or just some weird fluke. But otherwise it's hanging in there. I pruned it a little bit more today. So now I finally got this one where I got the free base down there. Easier to water and, you know, don't have to worry about any splash up, especially if it's somebody else other than me watering them. Now as far as the super sweet 100 cherries, still my best plant. That sucker's really getting up there now. You figure that box is level 2, 4, 6, 8. And it's right about 8 feet. I mean, it's up there. Do you remember my last video? Now when I stand under it, it's hard to tell, but I mean, I'm a foot below. It's a foot taller than my reach. So just a monster. I actually put a Windex bottle down there just to give you kind of an idea. So the pot, the container, is about the size of the Windex bottle. And remember, I planted pretty much 2 inches from the bottom of the container this year. And, you know, backfilled the soil as it grew to get a better root system. I mean, that sucker's just a monster. Been giving us tons of cherries. Again, the heat just doesn't seem to impact the cherries this year. I'm gonna have that cluster up there that I'll need a chair or a ladder to get to. But my wife just picked it pretty good today, so there's nothing to see. We should be able to see a lot of remnants here. Kind of like where these were picked. Or maybe those are just undeveloped. There, that's better remnants right there. But I mean, we've probably had 30 cherries at this point. Every couple days we're picking cherries. Those will be ready pretty quick. But the heat did kick up. It's 101 today. 105 heat index. So I don't know if even the cherries are going to start slowing up. Video got cut there. Sorry about that. Got sidetracked. At any rate, beans. You know, they kind of stayed weird down here. Then we had a little bit of an explosion through there, and it started filling out a little more. You know, again, my mistake was pruning it down to 3 plants. I should have just left the whole little trawl, whatever you want to call it, going across and just left them all. That's what I should have done. Or at least left one like every inch or 2. But at least they're doing a little bit better. That center one, for some reason, is always the dominant one. It always shoots up ahead of the others. You know, and then the side 2 kind of play catch up. I did give them some Miracle-Gro, contrary to a lot of gardeners' beliefs. But every time I give them Miracle-Gro, it helps them a lot. I wouldn't be doing that if they're thriving on their own. But I'll tell you what, since I've been Miracle-Growing them, I get this. And that right there was all basically no Miracle-Gro. So you tell me. Maybe I'll stunt them to where they never put beans on, but, you know, we'll see. These are late bloomers regardless of temperature. If I don't get any beans this year, then I could probably blame it on that. Ah, the cucumbers. Starting with the trellis. We're finally starting to get almost a full trellis. Look at that. So we got 10 feet plus the cinder blocks, which is about a half a feet, so about 10.5 feet maybe. And it's not the best sun right now, but again, I like coming out when I'm in a little bit of shade because it's so hot. But if you can see that, the left side and the right side, they have made it over. And I actually got out the 6-foot ladder, stood on the top, tied jute string on each of them to start training them to come back on the other side. But we're at least 11 feet on that one, and probably 10.5 on that one if I extended them. Now, changes to this. Remember how after vacation I lost a lot of my leaves? It's, how should I put it? The plants themselves have been thriving. They're not dying, but production's just not happening. Not compared to when we get to talking about that. But what I did figure out, remember how I had 4 and number 3, I had cracked it at about this height, and I said it never came back? What I didn't realize is it had 3 shoots, 3 of its side shoots. You know, like these leaves that come out and then they only go so far. I guess when the top cracked, it made those take off, and especially one of them. So one of them, I went ahead and I tediously, without cracking it, fished it all out. It had wrapped itself around kind of like that. Oh, sorry, I'm congested. Mowed the lawn and it was dusty, and I don't wear masks. But at any rate, that's why this looks so open here, because a lot of that was that vine that I moved, and then I actually took the other ones. They weren't as long, and they're up somewhere around here. I trained them up, so they may be kind of filling in too. But it puts me back to 4, so I don't know if you can see, but those middle 2, we're gonna have back to 4. Probably should have 3, but we're gonna roll with it. But the fruit's still stunted, you know. That cool day a couple days ago I talked about, boom, it exploded with flowers. And I was actually having a lot of bumblebees. They're not there right at this moment, but they've been there all day. And they're even going back and forth from the cucumbers over there. But as you can see, they're still staying stunted. I mean, they're growing a little bit. Like every time I put it on my fingers for reference. You know what was sad though? Well, I don't know if I should say sad. This one that was all wrapped up in one of these tentacles that I kind of wanted to leave it to see if it would overpower and rip the tentacle or not. I had to take that tentacle off because it was one of the ones that were those side shoots from the broken number 3 plant that I retrained up. But I'll tell you what, so far this has been the performer this year, other than the fact that I got to try to train this corner in so it looks like one beautiful highlighter, green highlighter swipe of beautiful green. But man, we've been getting tons of cucumbers. Every other day my wife's picking a handful. I am starting to get what looks like it might be like a type of fungus on the leaves. So I'm going to have to look into that a little more, but it's been like that for a few days and they're not really deteriorating. I'll monitor that. I really don't like to use pesticides, and if I have to, I'll get into the organics, the vinegar, yada, yada, yada. But we'll see how they do. But the zucchini have just been going crazy. We're getting tons of zucchini. Squash are just starting. My wife picked the first squash today. I'll tell you what the bad news is though. On the, what's that called? That's called the crookneck squash. Crookneck hybrid squash, okay? The picture shows it's smooth and it's bumpy. It looks like a gourd. So we haven't tried it yet, but I have a bad feeling it's not going to be very good, which is why people don't eat gourds. And I looked it up and it looks like it's hit or miss if they're going to be smooth, if they're going to be bumpy. There's some reasons they think, like maybe high calcium deposits and stuff, which possibly when I dumped all that, what's it called, all that Weber grill charcoal dust on there, maybe that had something to do with it. But I think it's just how that one was.
I don't know if I should pick that one.
That's up to you. It probably could go a little longer.
And then there's
But
one over here that's almost There's a cucumber there, but it's not. Oh, there's two. Actually, that one's close. You see that one? We don't have the videotape it, but there's one right there.
oh yeah, it's getting real close. Probably one more day, huh?
That one.
That's going to be the next one that's going to be ready, if you can see that, in the next day or two. Probably Monday, since we'll leave early tomorrow morning and get home late tomorrow night. But yeah, we've been definitely performing. I'll go ahead and put a couple pictures in just from what the wife picked today. But it's hanging in there. So, you know me, I somewhat do like aesthetics, so I do want to try to get this one trained, like to make a U-turn to fill that in. So I've been extremely happy with this. This blowed my mind. I mean, again, I didn't work that soil, so it wouldn't have done it without the Miracle-Gro. And again, I'm not sponsored by Miracle-Gro, but I'll tell you what, if you've been following my videos, this has not been that old, and this is just performing like crazy. We're eating from it every day, every other day. So my biggest mistake is I wish I'd doubled it up. I should have went ahead and put another row right there of everything. That's the one mistake that I made, that I wish I would have done that. But it was so experimental, I really didn't expect it to work. So got everything mowed yesterday. I haven't had to mow in like, I don't know, couple, 2-3 weeks, because it's just been a drought. That's how it is out here. We're either in a monsoon season or a drought season. But you could tell the grass is all dead. But what happens is the grass doesn't grow, but you get these weeds that sporadically grow, and then it looks bad, and before you know it, you got 8-inch weeds that you're walking the dogs and they're brushing on your ankles. So I went ahead and mowed it all. But I think that's about it for this week's update. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. I guess I could add the wife's avocado plant. Doing okay. These I've noticed, it's like once they hit about 2 or 3 feet, they really start flourishing. Like in their adolescence, they're slow growers. Because I mean, we've been doing these now for probably 5 or 6 years, you know, and we get about 2 years out of them. You know, that first season we bring it in, it's in all season. We bring it out the next season, it grows like crazy and gets too big to bring in the third season. But there you go. I'll post back next week and let you know how it's doing. But yeah, I can't wait. I really, really, really want that pink brandywine to make it through the summer. You know, if I could make it to fall, because remember, I'm in the south, and our fall is like a northern summer. You know, it becomes a perfect grow season. And because these are interdeterminants, as long as I keep them alive, we'll be golden. But I am pretty upset to see that Cherokee not taking off and then having those leaves get like that. But we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching. Okay, just when we thought the video was done, my neighbor's got some looks like gourd plants wildly growing where his neighbor's house used to be. Sure looks like a gourd, doesn't it? But they're going around this concrete platform right here. But he said maybe he'd let me transplant that one. get it into my garden and see what it does. I got that gourd plant transplanted right in that little hole that I said I was going to wrap cucumbers in. Not anymore. We'll see how it goes. Thanks to Jared, our neighbor, the one on the right. The one on my left's my son Bradley. But Jared's the one that provided that, and we'll have to kind of keep up with his gourd garden and see how that's doing.